Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm so happy to have you crafting with me today. In today's video, I am going to be making a cover for my new Drawlloween journal that I am putting together for the month of October. This year, I wanted to challenge myself by using this cut up this book, Underworld edition collage book, to put together some pages where every day we follow along a prompt. If you're not familiar, Drawlloween is put on by the artist Mab Graves every year, and last year was my first year participating. I put together a journal last year and I had such fun that I really wanted to try it this year, but of course each year the prompts are sort of similar, so it was kind of fun to come up with a new way of challenging myself, and so I am using this book to create a collage prompted by each of the categories each day for the month of October, using only images from this book. So I've gradually put together all of my pages. Now the base pages are available. You can see how they were constructed in a short video here on YouTube, and then I've also got reels up on Instagram. So go and have a look at those. You can see how I've sort of put the pages together. I am using a really fun vintage haunted house book as the base for the book, and I wanted to keep as much of that intact as possible. So when you flip through the book, you'll have my collaged images on one side and then the haunted house images on the other. So today we are making a cover for these pages, and we're starting out with just a scrappy box here. Kind of an old one actually. I've had it in my stash for a while, but I did pick it out because it's nice and thin. So we're starting out by just tracing around the pages. This is going to give us an idea of how big we need the cover to be. Just 2 panels, a front and a back. We don't need a spine for this journal. It's going to be kind of a flip journal. And then I went around obviously just tracing it out and added an extra little border, which I started out at 1 centimeter and then sort of realized that was going to be a little bit too large. So I went in at 0.5 centimeter extra. That'll just sort of give it a little bit of like leeway around the edge of the pages, and just checking that off and cutting it with my Stanley knife. The cardboard wasn't very thick, so it was pretty easy to cut out. And then once we had 2 panels, one for the front, one for the back, just checking off that they were nice and even, that nothing sort of was ridiculously askew. They were nice and straight. So I know we have sort of detoured a little bit from Fisherman's Basket. I know there were a couple of you waiting for the final edition in that video series, but I actually forgot that we are so close to the end of the year and that October is now indeed upon us, and I had planned to do some spooky crafting over the month of October. So Fisherman's Basket will indeed be finished, but I just wanted to do a little detour and finish work on this project here, and we'll be back to finish Fisherman's Basket at the end of October, or actually early November, because I figured out there's also 5 weeks 5 Fridays in October this year, which is insane to me. So to cover up the branding on this cardboard, I'm going through with some sticky paper. Now you don't have to use this, you can just leave it if you don't mind the branding peeking through, but seeing as what I'm covering these with is a little bit on the lighter side, I did want to sort of cover it up. So to do this, you could just stick down some extra paper, you could paint over it. This is just some sticky paper I used to make postage labels for my shop. So I've just added one entire sheet to each side of each the front and the back, so that sort of made them nice and white and clean. You couldn't see any branding or any drawing out marks or anything on those. So to do the inside covers, we are going to be using some decoupage today. The age-old secret of using some beautiful napkins to do some decoupage on the inside cover. These are some pretty napkins I picked up from H&M, fully intended to use them in the house, and then ended up stealing most of them for my crafts because I absolutely adore the pattern. And during the process that we're doing today, I am trying to keep a little bit of continuity between the colors that I'm using, the materials, and sort of carrying those through into the cover, because that's what we've used in the pages. So hopefully when you open the book, it'll all sort of go together, feel like it all belongs. And I did use a few scrappies from these napkins in some of the little bits and pieces that I've added to the pages there throughout the book. So using them seemed like the next natural step in just tying all of these colors, designs, and patterns all together throughout the book. So we do only need the top layer of this napkin to do our decoupage project, but I am cutting it with the back layer on. That will just help me keep my lines nice and straight. The materials stay a little bit heavier. The little tag that you see there is, again, just a garment tag that I've had stashed away, and I'm going to use that as kind of a little bit of a clasp on the back to hold a fastening ribbon in place. So I was lucky enough, oh my goodness, I was so excited at this point because I'd managed to get 3 birds out of this napkin design into the book. One for the front, one for the back inside covers, and then one for the little tag clasp as well. I was so excited. Now it's also mentioning I had given this napkin just a little bit of a dry iron as well, just to sort of get those fold marks out, seeing as I was using the whole thing. I'm going in with some Mod Podge here. This is just the squeezy one. I have used a glue stick for this though, and I also have used just a wet glue, watered down PVA, as long as it's not too wet. Will also work, and the spongy brush will also help you avoid getting too much glooping and brush strokes, but it's also not 100% necessary, so don't panic if you don't have one of those. And then I'm just gently layering the napkin pieces down onto our surfaces, and sort of easing out crinkles as I go. You probably are going to get a few little crinkles here and there and a few little bubbles, but don't worry, it's all part of the charm. And then going back over with just a very light coating of the Mod Podge on top. That'll just sort of seal everything and stop things from ripping. And then I'm going to pop those aside to dry while we work on the front cover. Or they had dried by this point. I sort of went away and had a cup of tea and then came back after they were dry. Do the same, make yourself a cuppa. This is a really beautiful fabric I've also had in my stash. I bought some it's just from Spotlight, but a few years ago now, and I went and bought some, and then I went back and bought some more because it was on clearance, and I just have been obsessed with it. So using the template to cut those fabric pieces down to size, I wanted to make a little number cameo kind of little tag for this journal as well, just to help me in the future remember which year was which with this journal. This will sit nicely on the cover there, a fun little addition. And again, using the same coffee dyed paper that I've used on the inside journal, on the outside of the journal, and that will again carry through some of that continuity between the inside and the outside covers. So then we're just going to trim that little one down to size using a ruler, and I love a good torn edge. So actually I was kind of stressing at this point that it was actually going to be a full square, like that I wouldn't have a weird edge, but it was fine. We got a nice little square out of it. And then I'm just going in with my pen. This is the Uniball Tiny Eye, I think it's called, or Uniball Eye pen for a little faux stitched border. Now, before we stick our fabric down, I wanted to add some spiders' webs just to sort of bring in that spooky vibe. And I was thinking of using some actual stitching for this, and then I just didn't. I just was like, no, I think you know, it would be nice to have more texture, but I really then did decide that the uni ball would be just fine to get to communicate my spider web idea. So I drew them out with a pencil just roughly first, and really to draw a spider web all you need are some lines and some half circles. So if you can draw a semicircle and you can draw a straight line with a ruler, you are good to go. So just adding those little half circles into our diagonal lines here at sort of odd intervals will help it look a little bit more natural. And also doing short strokes with your pen will also help you achieve more of an accurate line as you draw, rather than just trying to draw it all in one stroke. That's a little tip I've always found. And the uni ball won't be color fast, like you won't be able to wash it, but for this particular project it will work just fine as a fabric, like to draw on fabric. So next we're just going to add some guide holes, and that is so that when we start adding all of these layers, we're not trying to punch holes through absolutely many layers. So I keep cutting those holes out as we go, and then that sort of helps it not be such a huge task to try and cut through with just my little teeny tiny hole punch. And if you watched last week's video, and indeed the video before, this has become one of my go-to favorite techniques for adding fabric to your paper crafting surfaces. This is just the bare double-sided tape. It is so sticky. It is, you know, just a marvel to work with. It is very sticky though, so it's, you know, you got to be patient. This is the 36 mil. If I had a thicker one, that probably would have worked better. I know it does come in a 48 as well. And if indeed also, as you'll see in some of the upcoming clips here, if I had even a thinner one, would have been also really good. So I'm going to have to go back to Bunnings and just see what else I can find in their range, just to sort of save a little bit of anguish in having to cut so many strips and then trim the strips down, etc. So I'm just adding those to the page, and this will be obviously repeated on both covers. I'm currently working on the back cover at this point. So because it didn't go all the way to the edge, rather than trimming it off, just removing that second last piece there so that I can lay down the final strip. Works really well. And then you've basically created essentially a giant sticker, and then we're just going to add the fabric onto that sticker, kind of like remember when you would cover your school books in contact paper? Kind of like that. Same kind of technique, where you sort of start from the bottom, except that obviously we're adhering it to a sticky surface. We're not adhering something sticky to our surface. So it would be, I think, a bit of a nightmare to try and add it to the fabric in this particular project. So definitely keep your strongest surface the sticky one, and then you'll be able to work with it a lot easier. So after removing all of the tape from the backboard, it's time to just gently manipulate the fabric onto it as you go. You will have a little bit of give, like this is not like a one-time only deal, but it does stick really well. So once it's on, and you're happy with it, I don't think it will go anywhere. But, you know, don't panic if you sort of get a little air bubble, or if things, you know, as you put it on, start to go sort of sideways. But if you line up sort of your bottom two corners and work upwards, that's sort of, or, you know, indeed from the top down, all the the bottom up. That will definitely help in getting things reasonably straight. I sort of had thought as I was doing this, like, oh, maybe that wouldn't have need to be so necessary if I'd cut the fabric just a little bit bigger than the surface that I'm working on. So that's definitely something I'll remember for the future, just to sort of, give yourself a little bit of give. Obviously, the spider webs have to be straight-ish. So if you're just using a plain fabric though, or something where you haven't got something distinctive on the back, if you cut it a bit bigger, then it doesn't matter if it's a little bit crooked or it doesn't go on entirely straight and within the lines. We will be adding a border to this cover, so that was also something that I kept in mind, that if the edges are a little bit ratty or didn't quite align perfectly, then it's fine, it doesn't really matter. So I'm just rounding off the edges of the little tag here. The top part was too thick to go into my little corner rounder, so I'm just using some scissors for that. And then we're just sort of preparing the tag, getting everything ready to basically start constructing. We're already at like the construction phase of this cover, so put all that to the side while I got the border strips ready. And if you're a sewer, this was basically I made these little strips to use actually to make a lampshade out of, and then so it's basically like you would make bias binding. So it's just a strip of fabric where you fold the edges in on themselves, iron it flat, and then to get this particular sized strip, I just ironed it flat again. So it is basically bias binding. And if that's too complicated, don't worry, you don't need to do that. You can just fold the fabric over, or you can even just use some paper or paint a border. Like, you don't need to stick anything on. And then I cut my bear tape down like lengthways in half, and that was enough to sort of like feed it over one side and then fold it and sort of coerce it around the other side. And now I'm just using that sticky surface to adhere the first strip of bias binding as our little border. And I did actually come up with a kind of easier way to do this, because this process gets repeated 8 times, obviously. 4 sides for each cover, 2 covers, by the time you get to the last one, you've got it pretty down pat. But where I'm up to right now is just adding that to one side and just manipulating it so that the edges of the tape are covered and that it's nice and strong, and that's basically it. I mean, what a marvel. Like, it worked really, really well. So once I'd done all 4 of those, I just trimmed off the little corner bits so that, they weren't sort of ratty on the edges. And then I did go in and punch the holes through. And I realized I should have done this before adding the border. But it's okay. It wasn't too much of a drama, to just sort of punch through what would be the tape and the fabric at this point. And it didn't cut all the way. It's just a little hole punch. But if you have like one of those crocodiles, I think is what they're called, that would probably be okay to cut through. But just bear in mind that at this point you're cutting through something sticky like adhesive. So for me, it's easy to clean this tool after that to get any adhesive off for the future. So just bear that in mind. I'm not really sure. I guess you could use a craft knife, if not a hole punch, to do that, if you're not using an actual punch or something like that. And then I realized that when adding the border, I'd kind of cut off a little bit of my spiderweb design, so I just went back in and touched that up again and sort of framed it out with a little bit more of the pen on each side. And then there was a little hole in the top of this and little tag, and I wasn't going to put anything on there, but I really wanted to just add something because it just sort of looked a little bit out of place, and me, like a little bit of extra something will just find something. So I added a little bit of the string, and this little dolly has entered the chat. I found her at an op shop and I just desperately wanted to add her to the cover. She is the inspiration for the cover, and I'm obsessed with her. She's super cute. She looks vintage. She's not ceramic. She's kind of like a hard plastic, which is perfect because she's not too heavy. Which is great for adding like little, extra bits to the cover of the journal. But I did base the color of this string. I went hunting in my stash to sort of match the little velvet tie that's around her waist there. So again, picking up on some of that continuity of color throughout the design of the cover. And to get this tag all finished off, I'm just adding a little bit more of the double-sided tape to both the bottom and the top of the inside flap of the tag. I should have mentioned earlier that we do only really need to decorate the very, very front. So we don't need to decorate the inside and we don't need to decorate the back, because that's all going to be hidden, because this is going to be like a little clasp that holds a ribbon in place that's going to tie around the middle of the journal. So you'll, untie the ribbon and flip the journal up like a notebook. So adding just a little bit of the double-sided tape to the top and the bottom, and that's going to really keep that ribbon hopefully from venturing too far up or down. It's just giving it a much more narrow path to just sort of sit in there, and it's not going to sort of zoom all the way to the top or zoom all the way to the bottom. So I guess that's maybe about 1.5 centimeters of tape on the top and the bottom there, just something to sort of keep everything tucked in. And then I did add the ribbon in there just to sort of make life easy afterwards, and get all pressed down and in place. This ribbon is again just one I've had in my stash for a really long time. It's just a black and white. It's quite synthetic feeling, like the type like that you would wrap presents or something with. Soft enough, but very stiff, and it became even more stiff when I did do a dye on it with just some coffee, and I added a little bit of acrylic paint to that dye bath as well, so a little bit of brown and just a smidgen of black, and that sort of gave it a nice like rustic kind of worn in dye, which I was really happy with. And then to get this all glued down, you could use more tape. I did decide to use some wet glue for this, my ever trusty Well Bond. This does have a slightly longer drying time, but boy is it worth it, because that is not going anywhere once it's dry. So because I was gluing through the fabric onto the sticky adhesive underneath, I really wanted something nice and strong and that wasn't going to fall off in the future. Like, how annoying would that be? And I did sort of give it a little bit more room on the bottom, ever so slightly, than the top. I don't know why, I just did. It just felt natural to sort of have it not perfectly centered. And I put that aside to dry, and now we're going to work on the front cover. Now, a little bit fussy with this. This is a little bit of a fussy process. So you could definitely just glue her to the front. I did not want to do that. I wanted to sort of have that mixed media feel, and also just feel like she was secure, but not stuck down. I don't know. It just didn't feel right to glue her down. But certainly whatever you're adding to the front, you could glue down. I decided to use just some cotton, which is doubled over, to sew her to the cover using the little indentation between her shoulders and her head. So I guess around her neck. And then I also just added a stitch around each shoulder or up into her armpit, and I then also sewed her arms in tight. So I tucked her arms down by her side just so they weren't sort of flippy flapping all over the place, and that was sort of enough to hold her onto the cover, I think. And I wanted the base of her dress basically to be hanging free, because obviously the ribbon is going to come around the back cover and come up under her body from the back. And if I'd sewn her feet, you would have to sort of lift her up and manipulate her to pull the ribbon in and out to open the journal, which to me feels a bit impractical and just a bit annoying, actually. So I left her sort of hanging by just the top half. And then it's really important, if you're going to sew something, to keep the shape and integrity of your fabric, to give it a really good stretch. So give it a jiggle, a wiggle and a jiggle, up and down, in, around, all up and down, as much as you can, just to keep the buckling out of the fabric. And then once I had finished with that and given it a really good stretch, I did give it a nice iron, and that sort of got any wrinkles from where I was like scrunching it up to get those everything to sit flat. So once it was ironed, I did just repeat the same process as before, making our front cover into a giant sticker using the two-way tape, and then we're going to add her down. Now, it was the same. I just tried to, as best I could, line up the bottom flat adjacent edge and then the two corners, and then obviously the sides, and then just working my way up and getting it nice and stuck down as I went, and making sure that it wasn't coercing in one area or another, like just kind of really gently and patiently. This is real time, so this is how long it took. Get it down, and then once we got to the top, giving it a really good stretch as I stuck it down. And as I mentioned earlier, this isn't like a one and done. You do have a little bit of give to sort of get everything stretched and flat and stuck down. So just be patient and work those little any little air bubbles and wrinkles and dimples out of it as you keep going up and up and up, and then eventually it should be stuck down. And then something I've also had success with in the last couple of weeks of my crafting using this double-sided tape technique is just to go in with the ball flat end of a pencil, and that really will get in there and get all those little areas that might have lifted, because obviously there's there's cotton in there. So it definitely just needs a little bit of manipulation with a tool to get in there and get everything stuck down. And then, as I say, fool me twice. I remembered to cut these holes out before adding the border, which did just make it just that little bit easier. And then going back in with my scissors to just fix up those last few little scrappy bits of cotton and things out of the fabric, giving us a nice clean hole to work with. And this was my ingenious updated method for getting this down. Leave the protective paper on the two-way tape before you stick it down. Like, that actually made it so much easier to get it on and be able to really make sure it was stuck down really well, and then also stopped it from sticking to my surface because I just peeled it halfway. So peeled it to the front and then got the bias binding stuck down and then halfway, and that made it so much easier. And then I could really squash it down and really make sure it was good and stuck. And then it was a matter of just turning it over and removing the second side of the sticky paper and the protective paper, and then sticking it down on the other side. And that worked much, much better. I was like, wow, yes, like at this time we're at the fifth time's the charm. Oh dear. But it works really well, honestly. Like if you haven't tried adding two-way tape to fabric to then add it into your projects, I definitely recommend it. It would be beautiful on something like a bookmark or a tag or a tab that you're adding just to sort of bring in a little bit of extra texture. And obviously there's no dry time, so if it's not a super, super thick fabric that requires a really heavy glue, you can just sort of stick it down and away you go. And it works really, really well. I've, been using it, as you'll have seen on my channel. I've been using it now for, my last few projects, and I've really, really been enjoying it. It's been really good. And then, was a marvel for this project because it just meant that I could finish this edge off really cleanly. It gives it a little bit more of a finished, polished look with actually not very much work. Yeah. So one thing I did treat myself to in this journal, basically everything that I'm using in this journal today and indeed the pages for the collages that I'm doing for Drawlloween have been things that I've had in my stash already. But I did treat myself to a pack of the Tim Holtz Ideology cello stickers. They're kind of infamous at this point, but I've never bought them before. This is something new to me, and I have been using them in each page. And again, that's just another way to sort of keep a bit of cohesion between all the pages. And even though the subject matter is different, just that little bit of a visual cue carrying through each page is going to sort of make it feel like it's all one piece. So I wanted to add some of that into the inside cover there just to sort of give that a little bit more detail and make it feel a little bit more finished, but again also just tying it to the rest of the journal. And then it's time to add our little 2025 little tag that we made, and again just using some of the ubiquitous well bond to attach that to the cover, and that will work really well. Like that won't be going anywhere at this point. And you'll see here I had this amazing idea in the hardware stage. I was sort of thinking about hardware for this cover, and I found these little corner bits that I had in my stash. I'd used them for to put on the corners of some picture frames just to make them feel a little bit more fancy. And I had a bunch left over, so thankfully I had 8. I had a few more, but I had enough to do this cover. So again, with the well bond, just going in and adding some of that to the inside, and also along that joining edge too. And what was actually amazing was that by the time we added the little border to the outside cover, these little like corner flourishes, I don't know what we call them, corner flourishes, weren't too deep. So they were just the right depth to stick on the corners of each corner. And then, they weren't sort of like sticking out on the other side. It was like just the perfect depth. So sometimes you get lucky with these little things. I encourage you to look around in your stash before buying anything new. Look around in your stash and see what you've got, and see if you can use that to sort of add some value to your journal or your journal cover, by way of like, how can I use this, for journaling, even if it's not necessarily a product or item or material that's specifically for journaling. Like I think these are supposed to be for like putting on the corners of little boxes or something. Like I don't know, I can't remember where I bought them. I've had them for years. But actually, in kind of a weird coincidence, the frames that I bought these for house some Mabgrave's art. So there you go, like a little nice little coincidence there. continuing on with some more hardware here, I again just had a little look around in my stash, and I have a little weird like metal area where I keep like random metal bits and pieces, and I found this old key. Who knows where it's from? I don't know. I think it came in a bottle of buttons that I bought from the op shop, and then the other one is just again another little key charm that I had in my stash from days gone by. Added a couple of jump rings to those, and that'll sort of create a nice little hanging charm for the front cover. And then our back tag is pretty well dry at this point, so that's all ready to go, and it's looking fabulous. I love how it turned out. The next step, again in the hardware phase, is to add some eyelets, and they're sort of like a bronzy color. I don't have a fancy crocodile. I did treat myself to this little just grommet puncher situation from Amazon. It was I think $12, nothing too crazy. And before you come at me about doing this backwards, there is a reason I put them the wrong way around on the front cover. I didn't want to smash little Dolly's face. I wasn't too sure if I would be able to successfully have her hanging over the edge of the desk and do it the right way around. So the front little eyelets are the wrong way around, but that's quite all right. I think that was worth it, because I just was worried that I was going to somehow damage her if I did it up, if I put her face down on the table and and started hammering away. But the back cover, I did put them on the right way round. And this is a great little tool to have. It's not too much of an investment. You can trot it out when you need to. It comes with a bunch of different eyelet colors. I think there was some dark kind of gunmetal gray, silver, bronze, and some shiny gold ones as well. The bronze was definitely the way to go for this cover, because all of our hardware at this point has like a bit of a bronzy feel to it. And then to finish off, oh my goodness, we're at the end where we're actually going to start binding the book. And my vision for this was some giant jump rings, like giant jump rings. Something I did not have in my stash. So we're going to make them today. I think this is 38 gauge floral wire, just from my stash. It is just a normal craft wire, and then it's got this kind of brown paper wrap to it. And I'm creating just some rough circles, just using something I had on hand, a glue bottle. And wrapping, this is 2 pieces, so I think they usually come in a length of about maybe 30 centimeters, maybe a bit longer than that. But you do get that lovely spiral look about it. And the way we're going to approach this is basically as if we were threading keys onto a keychain. So the old-timey keychains where you have to like open it out and feed your keys on one by one. It's kind of the way we're approaching attaching these giant spiral jump rings today. It does feel a little bit fussy, and it was a little bit, but it's also not too tricky. Like it's not too crazy. So just be patient. We're going to feed the outer ring onto the cover and just pick one side. I went with the right side because that seemed natural. And then working backwards from the back of the pages to the front, we're going to feed the pages on a couple at a time, whatever makes you feel comfortable. Do it one at a time if that's more suitable, onto that first loop, and just sort of gently work them on one at a time, 2 at a time. I did sort of get a little bit carried away and try to do a big bundle, and then that didn't quite work. I couldn't get the hole to line up properly because at this point it is curved. If you don't have a thicker wire, you certainly could use something thinner for this, and then just keep wrapping it if you wanted something like, as thick but with a thinner wire. You could just use some string and tie it off and make cute little bows at the top. You could use an actual keychain style ring, those ones ones where they're like a clasp and you just sort of close them off at the top. Yeah, there's a lot of different options for this. I really wanted them to just look a bit funky and a bit different and kind of just crazy oversized. Like it just seemed natural to have something kind of wacky at the top of this journal cover, but use whatever you've got. So just getting to the top here, and the other thing to mention too is that I when I was looking for something for this particular process here, I also, the color played into it as well. So having this floral wire that just happened to be this sort of dark chocolate, really dark chocolate brown, which is the same color as our little dolly's ribbon. So yeah, again, keeping things kind of cohesive with the color palette will help. And then once we've got the pages through, you're going to, for the first ring, you're going to do the same for the second ring. And I know this shot isn't great, but basically you're just doing the exact same thing, feeding that first loop through the pages, being gentle and patient so that you don't the paper that I was using, the original Haunted House book, even though it has got a couple of built up layers on it now, it's still an old paper from the 90s, but it's pretty weathered. It's pretty weathered. This book was actually such a fabulous find. It was originally printed in 1907, like the original. This reprint was from the 90s, but just be careful when you're using soft or brittle paper like this that you don't nick it with your wire, because obviously that can happen, and the wire is very sharp, very, very sharp. So just be careful. It's not worth cutting yourself as you manipulate pages onto giant oversized jump rings that you've made from floral wire. Like a sentence I'm not sure I would have ever thought I would say, but here we are. Such is the plight of the crafter, am I right? So once we've got the jump rings on that first loop on both sides, we can add the front cover. I know they're still looking a bit funky and there's still kind of a little bit of a scary process ahead, so hang with me. But we're going to add the front cover panel. You can kind of see now how this journal is structurally going to work. Like we've got the spirals that are going to sort of open from the bottom to the top, and then we'll have the ribbon wrapping around the waist of the journal cover. So after I added the little key charm to the right hand side, we're going to now, as though we are feeding keys onto a keychain, right? So we're going to take that front loop that we fed through and we're going to keep working it through until we've got all the pages all the way on the entire piece of wire. So we're going to feed basically the entire length of wire through that first hole, so the right hand side. Feed that through just gently. And if you need to, there is still enough give in the journal that you can sort of manipulate the pages open a bit to sort of see what you're doing. And then I did decide to make the loops just a smidgen smaller, but decided to get all the pages on first before I started to manipulate the length of wire any further, like just to get everything so that everything wasn't sort of flippy flapping all over the place. So again, just gently, and this one was proving just a little bit more tricky to get that end through just blindly. So I did have to go through and really kind of open the book out once I started to resize the jump rings, just sort of open the pages out and sort of eyeball what I was doing as I was feeding that wire through. So you can see here, it is just a spring at this point, and you can just gently sort of coerce it, manipulate it, because the wire is thick, but it's not so thick that you can't bend it with your hands. So just, as I said before, just gently getting that end through again to shorten and make those jump rings feel just a little bit smaller, because I wanted them big, but they were kind of a bit outrageous and unruly So, which, I'm okay with, but I just wanted them to be just a little bit more smaller. And so just getting that end through there, all the way through, because it had, I don't know, maybe 40 pages plus the cover to get through there. So once it was through, oh my goodness, I breathed a sigh of relief. And I'm sorry, I did manage to film this bit entirely off camera for both jump rings. So I'll just have to talk you through it. Basically, the two ends, all we're going to do is basically just kind of wrap them around the other two pieces of wire that we've got there. So I did use my pliers at the end, and this is for a couple of reasons. One, we want everything, we don't want it to undo, right? We don't want it to spring back and like start to unravel. I don't think it would, because the wire is quite thick, but if you were using something thinner, that's definitely something that could happen. It just starts to unravel, right? So we want to stop that. We want to tie it off. Secondly, I wanted to get those really sharp ends and unruly sharp ends just out of the way, because they were sticking out and dangerous, and can nick the paper, and I don't want that. I don't want my beautiful pages to get scored by wire. So once they were all done, we were able to then finish off the jump rings again, and I did just do a quick test. Oh, it's worth mentioning too, as I went to feed the pages on, I did just triple check that they were all in the right order. My pages were numbered, so I went through and just made sure that everything was, in the right place, because it would be extremely painful to have to go back and undo all of this and rethread the pages. Like, absolutely not. We're not doing that. No. So then I again wanted to just add a little bit more, just one more flourish. Details, everyone. Details. In the way of adding some more of that same string that we used on the back tab. Again, just to sort of tie everything together, but also it's just going to, and add like a little bit more detail, but it's also just going to add a little bit more stability to keeping these jump rings all tucked in, and also hiding those sharp ends, and really hiding them away, so that you can laugh and play with your journal till your heart's content, and not worry that you're going to stab yourself with wire. So I did just do a wrap, just feeding it in and out and around the jump ring there, all the way from one edge to the other, till both of those sharp wire ends were covered. The front, I managed to wrap the tied end into the actual binding itself, so that I didn't have like a little tag bit hanging out, or a tail, I should say, a little tail hanging out on the front. But then obviously when I tied it off at the back, it did have the little tail still. But I'm okay with it. It's just again a little bit of extra detail. So guys, the cover is finished. Oh my goodness, it was so much fun to make this cover. All that's left to do is to tie a bow. The length of ribbon, I didn't know how much I would need, so I did just cut it a little bit longer than I needed in the dyeing process, just to make sure I would have plenty. Obviously, better to have too much than not enough, because you can trim but you can't put back. So just tying off a little bow here, so that we can get an idea of how long we can cut that extra tail bit. So I was smiling, like my smile was like from ear to ear at this point, because it had just turned out almost identical to how I'd pictured, and I was just so happy to be able to incorporate that beautiful little thrifted doll that I had been holding on to. I've been holding on to her there in my little drawer, just waiting for the right project to use her. Oh, I'm so happy with how it turned out. I was thinking as I was finishing off this project that in doing the border, depending on what type of fabric you were using, you could use something a little bit more high contrast. And I did actually think like, oh, maybe I could have even used some of this ribbon as the border. So that's another option, like to just get a really thick ribbon that's already got edging on it and use that to sort of like add to your border. I might do that in another project in the future and just sort of see how it turns out. And if the bare 2A tape can handle such a thing. Because that I did think like, oh, maybe a darker border would have looked really cute as well. So I'm just using a lighter here to just singe off the edges of the ribbon. That'll stop it from fraying, even though it's quite a synthetic one, and I don't think it will fray, but there's a top tip if you're using ribbon. But here she is. Please let me know down in the comments if you will be following along with Drawlloween this year. I will be putting out a video of each page every day for the month of October. So that's going to wrap things up for today, everyone, but I look forward to seeing you next week with another spooky project. In the meantime, I want to wish you a very happy crafting. Thank you so much for watching today, and I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.